The soft glow of the streetlights filtered through the dusty windows of the small bookstore, casting long shadows across the floor. Lucas was just finishing up his shift, carefully arranging the last few books on the shelf when he heard a commotion outside. He paused, glancing toward the window, where the muffled sounds of shouting and laughter reached him. Living in a quiet town meant that anything out of the ordinary piqued his curiosity, but tonight the energy felt different, more charged, more dangerous. He tried to shake off the unease that settled in his stomach as he turned back to the shelves. Books had always been his escape, a way to retreat from the uncertainties of life. They transported him to worlds filled with adventure and romance, far from the mundane reality of his own existence. Lucas was not one to seek out danger. He preferred the comfort of his novels to the chaos of the outside world. Just as he was about to dismiss the noise outside, the door swung open, and a group of men stumbled in, laughter echoing through the store. Lucas's heart raced as he recognized one of them, Victor, the leader of the local crime syndicate. He had seen the man from a distance, always flanked by his loyal crew, an imposing figure whose presence commanded respect and fear. "Hey, Bookworm," Victor called out, a devil-may-care grin plastered across his face. The gang behind him laughed, but there was a cruel edge to their amusement. Lucas froze, caught between the instinct to flee and the instinct to stay put. "What are you doing here?" Victor continued, stepping further into the store, his crew following closely behind. "Is this place still open?" Lucas forced a smile, though he could feel the tension rising in his chest. "We close in a few minutes. Just tidying up." Victor stepped closer, the warmth of his body radiating into Lucas's space. "What a quaint little shop you've got here. Doesn't look like it gets much action." His voice was low, teasing, and it sent shivers down Lucas's spine. "We do our best," Lucas replied, trying to keep his tone steady. The atmosphere felt thick with tension, and he could feel the heat of Victor's gaze on him, dissecting him. The gang members began to wander the aisles, their laughter echoing through the small space. Lucas felt a sense of vulnerability wash over him. He was acutely aware of their presence, the way they moved with an air of confidence that contrasted sharply with his own insecurity. "Got any books on how to be tough?" one of Victor's friends called out, laughing as he picked up a novel and pretended to read it in a mock-serious voice. "Or how to not be a nerd?" another chimed in, the laughter continuing to ring out like a bell in the quiet bookstore. Lucas forced himself to remain calm, though inside he was a ball of nerves. "We have plenty of options," he replied, trying to sound nonchalant. "You might find something useful." Victor stepped closer again, his expression shifting from playful to something darker. "You know, I've been thinking about how quiet this place is. It could use some excitement." Lucas felt his pulse quicken. "Excitement?" Victor leaned in, the amusement in his eyes replaced by a more intense gaze. "Yeah, excitement. Like a little adventure, you know? Something to shake things up." The implication sent a chill down Lucas's spine. He couldn't shake the feeling that he was in over his head. "I really should finish closing," he stammered, glancing toward the door, desperate for an escape. "Not so fast," Victor said, his tone shifting again. "We're just getting started." Before Lucas could react, the atmosphere in the room changed. A rival gang had entered the bookstore, and suddenly, the light-hearted teasing morphed into something far more serious. The tension escalated, and Lucas felt a wave of panic wash over him. He tried to back away, but the rival gang members approached, their expressions threatening. Victor's crew immediately shifted into a defensive stance, and Lucas felt the space around him shrink. "Looks like the Bookworm has some friends," one of the newcomers sneered, eyeing Lucas with disdain. "Get out while you can," another added, their voice dripping with mockery. Lucas stood frozen, caught in the crossfire of a brewing conflict. The fear surged within him, filling him with a sense of dread. He wanted to escape, to run out of the store and away from the danger, but his feet felt glued to the ground. Victor's demeanor shifted. He became the fierce leader he was known to be, stepping forward to confront the rival gang. "You're in the wrong place, and you know it. Leave now, and I might just let you walk away." The rival gang laughed, clearly unfazed. "You think you can intimidate us, Victor? You're nothing without your crew." The tension reached a breaking point, and before Lucas could comprehend what was happening, a fight erupted in the small bookstore. Books were knocked to the ground, and the sound of fists hitting flesh filled the air. Amidst the chaos, Lucas found himself pushed to the side, the commotion swirling around him. he felt a surge of adrenaline as he realized he was standing between the two gangs, completely out of his depth. "Lucas," Victor shouted, spotting him in the fray. "Get out of here." But the warning came too late. A stray fist connected with Lucas, sending him sprawling to the ground. Pain shot through him as he struggled to regain his footing. The fight continued to escalate around him, the sounds of violence ringing in his ears. Just as he managed to push himself up, he saw Victor engaged in a fierce struggle with one of the rival gang members. "Victor!" Lucas shouted, his heart racing. Victor glanced back at him, his expression filled with urgency. "Stay back," he commanded, but Lucas couldn't help but feel a rush of concern for him. Just then, the rival gang member lunged at Victor, but in a swift motion, Victor sidestepped, countering with a punch that sent his opponent staggering back. "Let's finish this," Victor roared, his confidence igniting a surge of adrenaline in Lucas. With a rush of determination, Lucas found himself instinctively moving toward the chaos, driven by a mix of fear and the need to help. He hadn't expected to be part of this world, but now, caught in the middle of it, he felt a flicker of bravery rising within him. As the fight raged on, Lucas focused on helping Victor, dodging through the chaos to reach him. "I can help," he yelled, surprising himself with his own determination. "Get to safety," Victor shouted back, but Lucas could see the appreciation in his eyes. With a newfound sense of purpose, Lucas found a broken piece of wood on the ground, gripping it tightly as he approached one of the rival gang members who had cornered Victor. In that moment, the adrenaline kicked in, and Lucas swung the makeshift weapon, catching the attacker off guard. The impact sent the gang member stumbling, and Lucas felt a rush of exhilaration. "Nice move," Victor shouted, glancing back at him, a spark of surprise and admiration in his eyes. But just as Lucas felt a sense of victory, the fight continued to spiral out of control. Another attacker approached from behind, and Lucas braced himself for the impact. Before he could react, Victor was there, stepping in to defend him. "Back off," he growled, his presence commanding as he took down the rival with a swift punch. The tide began to shift in our favor, the chaos slowly dissipating as Victor's crew rallied. Lucas fought alongside them, the fear in his chest transforming into a determination to protect the people around him. Finally, with a decisive blow, the rival gang began to retreat. They scrambled out of the bookstore, leaving behind a trail of chaos. The atmosphere shifted from tension to relief, and Lucas felt a surge of victory wash over him. Breathing heavily, he turned to Victor, who was catching his breath. "You okay?" Lucas asked, his voice trembling with adrenaline. Victor nodded, his expression serious. "You did good, kid." A rush of warmth spread through Lucas at the praise. He had been afraid, but now, in the aftermath of chaos, he felt a flicker of connection with the man who had taken him captive. But as the adrenaline faded, the reality of the situation settled in. Lucas had been thrust into a dangerous world, and he had no idea what would happen next. He was still a captive, but something had changed between them in the heat of battle. Victor took a step closer, his gaze intense. "Listen, Lucas, I know this is all a lot to take in, but I need you to understand something." "What?" Lucas asked, his heart racing as he felt the tension in the air. "I didn't want to drag you into this, but you showed real courage back there," Victor said, his voice low. "You're not just some weak bookstore owner, you've got guts." Lucas felt his pulse quicken at Victor's words. The man was dangerous, but there was something in his gaze that hinted at a softer side. "I just wanted to help," Lucas admitted, feeling vulnerable. "Then let me show you what this life is really about," Victor said, a hint of sincerity in his tone. As the remnants of chaos faded around them, Lucas felt a tumult of emotions swirling inside him. He was still terrified, yet a part of him was drawn to the complexity of Victor's character. He had seen both the ruthless leader and the man capable of protecting him. "Okay," Lucas said finally, taking a deep breath. "But you have to promise me you'll keep me safe." Victor met his gaze, a flicker of something unspoken passing between them. "I promise." And in that moment, Lucas realized that the lines between captor and protector were beginning to blur. He had been thrust into a dangerous world, but perhaps, just perhaps, it was a world where he could discover a strength he never knew he had. The days following the chaotic confrontation in the bookstore felt surreal for Lucas. The initial adrenaline rush began to fade, replaced by an unsettling mix of fear and curiosity. He found himself living in a lavish penthouse that Victor called home, a far cry from his quiet bookstore. The stark contrast was overwhelming, and he struggled to adapt to this new life, teetering between the thrill of the unexpected and the anxiety of his uncertain future. Victor had kept his promise. He ensured Lucas was safe, and the initial tension of being a captive slowly morphed into an uneasy coexistence. Lucas felt like a puzzle piece that didn't quite fit, a small figure in a world filled with danger and power. Every day, Victor would check in on him, often lingering longer than necessary, his presence both comforting and intimidating. "What do you think?" Victor asked one evening, stepping into the living room where Lucas was curled up with a book. He had been attempting to lose himself in the pages, but the world around him constantly pulled him back into reality. "It's nice," Lucas replied hesitantly, looking up to meet Victor's intense gaze. The room was furnished with rich fabrics and modern art, a stark reminder of the life Victor led. Victor raised an eyebrow, clearly amused by Lucas's discomfort. "Nice? Is that the best you can do?" Lucas felt the heat rise to his cheeks. "It's just different from what I'm used to." "Different can be good," Victor said, leaning against the doorframe, arms crossed. The casual stance did little to mask his imposing presence. "You're not in that little bookstore anymore." "No, I'm not," Lucas replied, feeling a mixture of frustration and confusion. "I didn't ask for this, you know." "I know," Victor said, his voice lowering slightly, "but sometimes life doesn't give you a choice." Lucas could feel the weight of those words. He had been thrust into a world of danger and intrigue, and while he longed for the safety of his previous life, there was something compelling about the connection he was forging with Victor. He wrestled with his emotions, caught between fear and an unexpected attraction that made his heart race. As days turned into weeks, the initial fear of Victor began to dissipate, replaced by a cautious curiosity. He watched Victor interact with his crew, saw the way they responded to him both fearfully and with respect. There was a power in Victor that was hard to ignore, and it fascinated Lucas. One evening, as Lucas prepared dinner, Victor sauntered into the kitchen, his presence commanding. "What are you making?" he asked, his tone casual. "Just some pasta," Lucas replied, trying to keep his focus on the stove, though he could feel Victor's eyes on him. "Pasta? You've got to be kidding me," Victor chuckled, leaning against the counter, arms crossed. "You're in my territory now. Why not something more exciting?" Lucas turned, meeting Victor's gaze. "I like pasta. It's simple." "Simple isn't going to cut it," Lucas, Victor said, a teasing glint in his eyes. "You've got to learn to embrace life. Get a little adventurous." Lucas felt a flutter of something. Was it excitement or apprehension? "And what do you suggest?" he challenged, crossing his arms defiantly. Victor stepped closer, the playful banter shifting into something more intense. "How about you let me show you what life can be?" His voice dropped, filled with a sincerity that made Lucas's heart race. The air between them crackled with unspoken tension, and Lucas found himself captivated by the moment. "What do you mean?" he asked, unable to mask the curiosity in his voice. "Let's take a little trip," Victor suggested, leaning in as if sharing a secret. "Get out of this penthouse. I'll show you my world." Lucas hesitated, a surge of anxiety washing over him. The thought of stepping outside his comfort zone was terrifying. What if it's dangerous? "Life is dangerous," Lucas, Victor replied, his gaze unwavering. "But it's also full of surprises. Don't you want to experience it?" The challenge in his words ignited something within Lucas. The longing for adventure and the thrill of the unknown battled with the fear that had become so familiar. Finally, after a moment of contemplation, he nodded slowly. "Okay, let's do it." Victor's smile was infectious, lighting up his features. "Great, get ready, we'll leave in an hour." As the clock ticked down, Lucas felt a mix of excitement and trepidation. He quickly changed into something more suitable, battling the anxiety swirling in his stomach. What would this adventure entail? Would he regret stepping outside of his carefully controlled life? When Victor returned, he was dressed casually, exuding a relaxed confidence. "You ready?" he asked, his gaze locking onto Lucas's. "Ready as I'll ever be," Lucas replied, trying to quell the nerves rising within him. "Good. Let's go." They stepped out into the night, the cool air wrapping around them like a blanket. Lucas felt his heart race as they climbed into Victor's sleek car, the engine roaring to life. He had never been in anything quite like it, and the thrill of the moment sent adrenaline coursing through his veins. As they drove through the city, Lucas watched the world unfold outside his window. The bright lights, the sounds of laughter, the energy of the nightlife, it was intoxicating. He had always been an observer, but now, he felt like he was stepping into a story of his own. "Where are we going?" Lucas asked, turning to Victor, who was focused on the road ahead. "To a club," Victor replied, a hint of mischief in his tone. "You need to experience what it's like to let loose." "A club?" Lucas echoed, a mixture of excitement and uncertainty flooding through him. "Trust me, you'll love it," Victor said, glancing at Lucas with a smirk. As they arrived at the club, Lucas felt a rush of energy emanating from the entrance. The pulsating music vibrated through the air, and the colorful lights danced across the facade. He hesitated for a moment, caught between his comfort zone and the allure of the night. "Come on. Don't be shy," Victor said, sensing Lucas's hesitation. "Let's have some fun." With a deep breath, Lucas stepped out of the car, the music thumping in his chest. As they walked toward the entrance, he felt a surge of courage. He was with Victor, a man who exuded confidence and power, and that alone made him feel invincible. Inside, the club was alive with energy. People danced, drinks flowed, and laughter echoed off the walls. Lucas felt overwhelmed by the sensory overload, but also exhilarated. This was a world he had never dared to enter, and the thrill of being here was intoxicating. "Let's grab a drink," Victor suggested, leading Lucas to the bar. "What do you want?" "I'll just have a soda," Lucas replied, still feeling a bit timid. Victor chuckled, leaning against the bar with casual ease. "You need to loosen up. Get something stronger. It's a night for fun, remember?" Lucas bit his lip, contemplating. He had never been one to drink much, but there was something about being here with Victor that made him want to let go. "Okay, maybe a cocktail." "Now you're talking," Victor said, ordering a couple of drinks before turning to Lucas with an inviting smile. "Let's hit the dance floor." As they made their way through the crowd, Lucas felt the music pulsating through him, each beat a call to embrace the moment. He followed Victor onto the dance floor, the energy surrounding them electrifying. Victor moved with a confidence that was mesmerizing. He swayed to the music, a natural rhythm that drew attention. Lucas felt his heart race as he found himself dancing beside him, the proximity igniting a thrill he hadn't expected. Victor caught his gaze, his eyes sparkling with mischief. "See? Not so bad, right?" Lucas smiled, feeling the tension of the past few days begin to melt away. The laughter, the music, the freedom, it was exhilarating. He let go, losing himself in the rhythm, feeling the weight of the world slip away. As they danced, the connection between them deepened. Lucas noticed the way Victor watched him, a mix of amusement and something more profound in his gaze. It was intoxicating, and Lucas couldn't help but feel a rush of attraction. Having fun, Victor leaned in, his voice barely audible over the music. "Yeah, I am," Lucas admitted, surprised by how much he was enjoying himself. "This is amazing." "I told you," Victor replied, his tone playful. "You just needed a little push." As the night wore on, they continued to dance, lost in the moment. The crowd around them faded into the background, and all that mattered was the connection they were forging. Lucas felt a warmth blooming in his chest, the thrill of being so close to someone who had once seemed so intimidating. After what felt like hours, they stepped away from the dance floor, breathless and exhilarated. "Want to get some fresh air?" Victor suggested, a hint of mischief in his eyes. "Sure," Lucas replied, still riding the high of the night. They found a quieter spot outside, the cool night air refreshing against their flushed skin. Lucas leaned against the wall, feeling the adrenaline still coursing through him. Victor stepped closer, his expression shifting to something more serious. "You're different tonight, Lucas. You've got a spark." "I guess I just needed a change," Lucas replied, meeting Victor's gaze. "This is all so new to me." "Good. Embrace it," Victor said, his voice low and intense. "You deserve to experience life outside those bookstore walls." Lucas felt a rush of emotion at his words. "Thank you for bringing me here," he said, sincerity lacing his tone. Victor's gaze lingered on him, and for a moment the world around them faded. The connection between them felt electric, charged with unspoken possibilities. "Let's not let this night end just yet," Victor said softly, his voice thick with intention. Before Lucas could respond, Victor leaned in closer, his lips brushing against Lucas's ear as he whispered, "Come on. I have one more surprise for you." The promise in his voice sent a shiver down Lucas's spine, and he felt both exhilarated and terrified. What more could Victor have in store for him? But as he looked into Victor's eyes, he saw a warmth and sincerity that drew him in. "Okay," Lucas agreed, curiosity piqued. Victor took his hand, guiding him through the bustling streets, the city alive with energy. As they walked, Lucas felt a sense of freedom he hadn't experienced before. The weight of his previous life began to lift, replaced by a sense of adventure. Eventually, they arrived at a rooftop bar, the city skyline stretching out before them. The view was breathtaking, the lights twinkling like stars against the night sky. Lucas stood in awe, taking it all in. "Welcome to my favorite spot," Victor said, a proud smile on his face. "This is incredible," Lucas breathed, his heart racing. As they settled into their seats, Victor ordered a round of drinks, the atmosphere between them shifting into something more intimate. Lucas could feel the excitement building, the connection between them growing stronger. They talked, sharing stories and laughter, the night unfolding with an effortless ease. Lucas found himself opening up to Victor in ways he never thought possible. He shared his love for books, his dreams, and his fears. Victor listened intently, his gaze unwavering. "You're more than just a bookstore owner, Lucas. You've got a fire inside you. I can see it." The sincerity in Victor's voice made Lucas's heart flutter. "I've never thought of myself that way," he admitted, feeling a mix of vulnerability and exhilaration. "Maybe it's time you start," Victor replied, leaning closer, the distance between them shrinking. As the night continued, the chemistry between them became palpable. Lucas felt a mix of excitement and fear, caught between the thrill of the moment and the reality of Victor's world. "Victor," Lucas said softly, his heart racing, "what are we doing here?" Victor's expression softened, a hint of vulnerability breaking through his tough exterior. "I wanted to show you that there's more to life than just fear. I see something in you, something worth protecting." Lucas felt his breath catch in his throat. "And what about you?" he asked, the question hanging in the air. Victor's gaze darkened, a mix of emotions flickering across his face. "I'm complicated, Lucas. My life isn't easy, but you're different." In that moment, Lucas realized that he was standing at a crossroads. The attraction he felt for Victor was undeniable, but so were the dangers that surrounded him. Would he dare to explore the connection, knowing the risks involved? Victor reached out, his fingers brushing against Lucas's hand, sending a jolt of electricity through him. "You don't have to decide anything right now," he said softly. "Just be in the moment with me." Lucas nodded, feeling a rush of warmth at Victor's words. The uncertainty was still there, but so was the undeniable connection. As they sat together, the city lights twinkling in the background, Lucas felt a spark of hope. Perhaps this night was just the beginning of something extraordinary. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink. As Lucas and Victor sat on the rooftop, the city sprawled out before them like a living tapestry. The vibrant nightlife pulsed with energy, but at that moment, it felt as if they were in a world of their own, suspended in time. Lucas could hardly believe how much had changed since he first crossed paths with Victor. Victor's gaze was fixed on the skyline, his expression contemplative. "You know, I grew up in the city, but it's nights like these that remind me why I still love it," he said, his voice low and reflective. "There's beauty in the chaos." Lucas turned to him, intrigued. "You mean the crime and the danger?" "Not just that," Victor replied, a hint of a smile playing on his lips. "It's about the stories, the lives lived amidst the madness. There's something real about it." Lucas thought about that, about how different their perspectives were. He had always viewed the world through a lens of safety and predictability, while Victor embraced the chaos with open arms. "I guess I've always been more of a safe haven kind of person," Lucas admitted, his tone soft. "Safe is boring," Victor teased, nudging Lucas lightly with his shoulder. "You're not boring, are you?" Lucas felt a blush creep up his cheeks at the compliment. "I'm just a bookstore owner," he said, trying to downplay it. And that's what makes you interesting, Victor replied, his gaze locking onto Lucas's. You have a passion for stories, for words. That's not boring. The sincerity in Victor's eyes sent a thrill through Lucas. He realized how much he enjoyed this newfound connection with him, the way they could talk about anything and everything. And yet, there were still unspoken truths lingering in the air. What about you, Lucas asked, wanting to know more about the man who had unexpectedly entered his life. What's your story? Victor hesitated, the lightheartedness fading from his expression. My story? It's not one I'm proud of, he admitted, his voice quiet. I've done things I wish I could take back. Lucas felt a pang of empathy. We all have our regrets, he said gently. It's what we do moving forward that matters. Victor met his gaze, a flicker of something hope, maybe passing between them. You really think that? I do, Lucas replied, feeling a surge of conviction. Everyone has a past, but it doesn't define who we are. You're more than what you've done. Victor looked at Lucas, and in that moment, something shifted. The tension that had been building between them sparked to life. Lucas felt an urge to lean in closer, to explore the connection they had developed. Just then, a group of people passed by on the street below, laughing and enjoying the night. The sound broke the moment, and Lucas realized how much he craved the intimacy of the exchange they were having. Victor seemed to sense the change, too. He leaned in slightly, the distance between them shrinking. What if we start a new chapter, he suggested, a playful grin returning to his face. One that doesn't involve crime and danger. Lucas felt his heart race at the suggestion. What would that look like? Adventure, Victor replied, his eyes sparkling. Exploration. No more hiding in bookstores. Let's go out and experience life. Lucas hesitated, a mix of excitement and fear bubbling within him. The idea was tempting, but it felt so far removed from everything he had known. And where would we go? Anywhere, Victor said, a mischievous glint in his eye. Let's get lost in the city and see where the night takes us. Before Lucas could think twice, Victor stood up and extended his hand, an invitation he couldn't refuse. Come on, bookworm. Let's have some fun. With a deep breath, Lucas took Victor's hand, feeling a spark of electricity at the contact. As they descended from the rooftop and stepped back into the world, Lucas felt a rush of exhilaration. This was it, an adventure awaited. They wandered the bustling streets, the night alive with energy. Victor led the way, effortlessly navigating through crowds and drawing Lucas along. Each step away from the penthouse felt like shedding layers of his old self, leaving behind the timid bookstore owner he had always been. See that Victor pointed toward a brightly lit street vendor selling tacos. Best in the city. Lucas laughed, caught up in the excitement. You've tried them all. Of course, Victor replied with a wink. You can't live in this city without indulging in its food. As they approached the vendor, the tantalizing aroma of spices filled the air. Lucas felt his mouth water as Victor ordered a couple of tacos, handing one to Lucas. Here. Try it, Victor said, watching Lucas take a tentative bite. The flavors burst in Lucas's mouth, a delightful explosion of taste. Wow, this is amazing, he exclaimed, his eyes lighting up. See, life is all about trying new things, Victor said, grinning. As they continued to explore, Lucas felt a sense of freedom he hadn't experienced before. They ventured into an outdoor market filled with local artisans selling their crafts, vibrant colors surrounding them. Lucas admired the creativity on display, his heart racing with inspiration. You like this? Victor asked, noticing Lucas's fascination with a booth displaying handmade jewelry. It's incredible, Lucas replied, running his fingers over the intricate designs. I've always appreciated art, but I never thought I'd see something like this up close. Victor smiled, clearly enjoying Lucas's enthusiasm. Then, let's get you something. Consider it a souvenir from your first real adventure. Lucas felt a wave of warmth at the thought. He had never experienced such generosity, and it deepened the connection he felt with Victor. I can't accept that, he protested, though part of him wanted to say yes. Why not? You deserve it, Victor insisted, pulling Lucas toward the booth. After a brief discussion with the vendor, Victor picked out a simple but beautiful silver bracelet adorned with small charms. Here, he said, handing it to Lucas. A reminder that you stepped outside your comfort zone. Touched by the gesture, Lucas slipped the bracelet onto his wrist, feeling a sense of pride wash over him. "Thank you, Victor. This means a lot." "Good. Now let's keep moving before we lose the night." They wandered deeper into the market, Lucas feeling more alive than he had in years. Each new sight and sound filled him with joy, and the laughter they shared began to erase the memories of fear that had once consumed him. As they made their way through the crowd, Victor's hand brushed against Lucas's more than once, sending shivers of excitement coursing through him. Each touch felt electrifying, sparking something deep within him that he hadn't acknowledged before. "Let's go," Victor said suddenly, tugging Lucas toward a nearby street performer. A small crowd had gathered around a magician, and Lucas found himself captivated by the tricks unfolding before them. He watched with wide eyes as the magician made objects disappear and reappear, laughter bubbling up from the audience. Victor leaned closer, his breath warm against Lucas's ear as he whispered, "This is what life is all about, being in the moment." Lucas nodded, feeling the warmth of Victor's body beside him. "I never imagined I could enjoy something like this." "It's just the beginning," Victor said, his gaze steady. "You're going to discover so much more." As the performance ended, the crowd erupted into applause. Victor turned to Lucas, a playful grin spreading across his face. "Next up, dancing." "Dancing," Lucas repeated, the idea both thrilling and terrifying. "Yeah, come on," Victor exclaimed, pulling Lucas into the nearby dance area where people were moving to the rhythm of the music. Lucas felt a surge of apprehension, but the excitement of the night pushed him forward. He stepped onto the dance floor beside Victor, and as the music pulsed through the air, he felt the rhythm take over. Victor moved with confidence, and Lucas found himself following his lead. At first he felt awkward, but as the music enveloped him, he began to lose himself in the movement. The laughter, the music, the lights, they all blended into an exhilarating experience. "See? Not so bad," Victor called out, his voice filled with encouragement. Lucas laughed, feeling the freedom of the moment wash over him. He danced with abandon, the worries of his past life fading away. In that moment, all that mattered was the music and the connection he felt with Victor. As the night wore on, the chemistry between them intensified. They moved closer, the space between them shrinking with every beat. Victor's gaze lingered on Lucas, and Lucas could feel the tension building, a magnetic pull that drew them together. "Let's take a break," Victor suggested, leading Lucas to a quieter corner of the venue. They stepped outside onto a balcony, the cool night air a refreshing contrast to the heat of the dance floor. The city stretched out below them, a sea of lights twinkling in the darkness. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Victor said, leaning against the railing, his gaze fixed on the view. "Yeah," Lucas replied, his heart racing as he stood beside him. "It's incredible." Victor turned to him, and for a moment the world around them faded away. "You know, I never expected to meet someone like you," he said softly. Lucas felt his breath catch in his throat. "What do you mean?" "I mean, you're brave in a way I didn't expect. You took a chance on me, on this crazy life," Victor admitted, his eyes searching Lucas's. "Maybe I'm learning that life is too short to play it safe," Lucas replied, his heart pounding. Victor stepped closer, the intensity of his gaze sending shivers down Lucas's spine. "Exactly." The moment hung in the air, thick with tension. Lucas felt a mixture of excitement and fear, his heart racing as he met Victor's gaze. Would this be the moment when everything shifted between them? "Lucas," Victor began, his voice low, but the moment was interrupted by the sound of laughter and music from inside the club. Lucas felt the connection between them crackle, the air heavy with unspoken words. "What do we do now?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "We keep going," Victor replied, a hint of mischief returning to his eyes. "Let's enjoy this night and see where it leads us." "Okay," Lucas agreed, feeling a rush of excitement at the thought of exploring this newfound connection. As they returned to the dance floor, the night unfolded like a dream, filled with laughter, music, and the thrill of being alive. Lucas had stepped outside of his comfort zone, and it felt liberating. With Victor by his side, Lucas felt emboldened. The boundaries he had always placed around himself began to fade, replaced by the excitement of the unknown. Each moment was a reminder of how far he had come, how much he had grown. As they danced, their bodies moving in sync, Lucas realized that he was ready to embrace whatever came next. The night was still young, and with Victor by his side, he felt more alive than ever. Together, they were on the cusp of something extraordinary, and Lucas couldn't wait to see where this adventure would lead.